Thank you, Michael Green, and thank you for Chicago Humanities Festival. This is like so special to be, as someone who's lived in Chicago for a long time, it's very special to be, included in this event. And I'm really happy to talk to you. And reading Pure Color, oof, like during a time when I am editing a new film, which is, pardon my French, like kicking my ass. I feel like this film is trying to break up with me. And it's, and I just got back from LA yesterday, and I just, like, there's heartbreak. I mean, I'll fix it, because I always do. But, thinking about, like, drafts. And like a first draft, or a fifth draft, or like -2 drafts, or whatever. I'm curious about, because I think you're talking about like a draft of the universe, but I think about, I'm someone who, I think the minute that I had children, like each day is a new draft. Like I remember waking up and just being like, don't fuck this up today. Like just one day at a time. One of my children is here. He's seems to, he's right there. Oh, look at that. Well adjusted. I didn't fuck up today yet. But, but also thinking about the world of like cancel culture, where like people don't get to even draft themselves, like everybody seems to be a final draft and that's it, So I'm curious to know, like, maybe that's my first question in terms of just like draftable situations, like what do we do with drafts in this world right now that likes to just think of people, not just the universe or situations, like think of everything as like, that's final, that's it, and you're done.
I don't know what to do about that. It doesn't seem to me like, that's not what I was thinking about when I wrote about the universe this universe as being the first draft of creation. One of the things that I was thinking about when I came up with that idea, because in the book the idea is that God is an artist and this universe is God's artwork, and that we're living in the first draft of creation. And what I was thinking about when I wrote that was, I think we're all aware that like to be alive is a miracle, and kind of the least probable thing statistically is to have been born, given all the generations, exactly those two people had to, and then that particular sperm and that particular egg. It's just like there's nothing less likely than to be born. So I think we're all kind of aware of the miracle of existence, and yet at the same time, all we can do is complain. And we can't really live in that feeling of the miraculousness and the wonder. And, we sort of go through our days, just as I was, like my phone didn't tell me what hour it was properly. Like it's just this constant focus on our complaints and our petty problems. And I was thinking, well, really seriously, like what can be the reason for this paradox, and the fact that we're constantly critiquing and criticizing. And what I came up with was this idea that, not only is it a first draft, but sort of we exist to be God's critics of this draft. So actually there's like a very deep reason for us to constantly be criticizing, critiquing, looking for what's wrong, because God hears our complaints and our critiques and will make the next draft better. So that actually and to me, that sort of solved the problem of the miracle of existence and also this constant urge to critique and criticize. And that kind of created, the universe in which this book takes place. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think, also So, as Michael mentioned in my bio, I'm right now the director of the School of Art and Art History at the University of Illinois at Chicago, and we just finished our semester, and we had the final crits for the Masters of Fine Art students, and they're always so tough. And like rereading your book, I thought, like, why are there art critics? Like, why do we critique art?
Yeah, it's such a mystery, isn't it? Like, it seems like art can't exist with our critique of it. And it's something that I've thought about, and I don't think that I can even get to the bottom of it. I mean, maybe it is that it's just a way of professionalizing reacting to art, because everyone reacts to art, even if just to be like, that's boring and I'm not interested in it. And some people are particularly interested in their reactions, and that becomes professionalized. But yeah, maybe it just is an outgrowth out of reaction. When I was writing the book, do you know the book Manet and His Critics?
Yeah.
I love that book, and it's just basically these reviews that were collected by George Hurd Hamilton of all the things that were written about Manet's paintings at the time of the Paris salons, and how upset people were about these paintings. And these paintings, I mean, there's not a single person walking down the street who would be upset by his paintings. But people found them so offensive and so ugly, and just, people would go and stand in front of them and laugh. You can't even understand where that comes from. And to read the reviews is really interesting, because you realize, like, oh, art is not, as I'd always thought, this kind of platonic thing that exists separate from time and space. It exists in a context, and I guess something original has yet no context. Like, the artwork has to kind of make a context for itself over time. Like, it has to make an audience that understands it. So I just love that book. That's such a great document, that book.
Yeah, or I don't know, just the idea that, like, I think, I mean, I don't think of myself as an artist. I think of myself as I'm a filmmaker, and but I never went to film school. I went to art school to make films, and but there feels like I want to make that kind of distinction. But I'm a very visual filmmaker, and I think there's so much in your book that's about beauty and attraction. God, I mean, it's not too early to quote. Like, just honestly, what is like sticking into my spinal fluid right now is a person can waste their whole life without even meaning to, all because another person has a really great face.
It's sad. It's true.
I mean, that gutted me. I had to put the book down and just, like, go into the backyard and just face myself, But there's so much about this book that is about looking and beauty, and I think that so I don't know that all artists, and that's a big category, photography, painting, sculpture, blah blah. And we are, of course, like right across the street from one of the most fantastic art museums in the world, I would argue. But I think that, I don't know, we intellectually there's a way that beauty and our attraction to beauty, or it seems like, or maybe this is my perception, is I don't know, like, it's like, I love beautiful things, and maybe that's thought of as superficial, I mean, Mira, I call her Mira, but is she a Myra?
Mira.
Okay, Mira. She loves her lamps. She loves her jewel game. She loves the jewelry store. So I'm curious about, like, where do you place beauty, or where is beauty and beautiful stuff and aesthetics in your life, or in your writing even?
I just, like I said, came from New York, and I was staying with my friend, this artist, Leanne Shapton. She's a writer and a visual artist and a painter, and We've collaborated. We've been friends for 25 years, and I was staying at her place, and she has the most incredible visual sense of anyone I've ever known. Like, I could just look, like everything she has is interesting, every surface, every book, all her clothes, and it's some instinct for beauty. I don't really think I have that. I don't think I'm a visual person at all. I don't, after today, we'll have been talking to each other for an hour, and I'll go home and I'll forget what you were wearing. Like, this is not the kind of thing that I notice in the
black
world.
on black on black.
Well, you said before we started talking, you're like, I'm just wearing black on black. So I'll remember that, because I remember sentences, but I don't remember what things look like. And like, I think that, I don't know, it's just an instinct, and I think it has to be respected. Like the instinct for loving art or loving beauty or loving beautiful things, just, it's inevitable in certain people. And I think, loving beautiful people probably comes out of some biological thing. I mean, I think it's probably connected to procreation and just the deepest things about life. I don't know, but it's hard as a lover of beauty not to find that trivial. I mean, I have this thing in the book where I break down sort of humanity into 3 types, like birds, lovers
fish,
of beauty, okay. Birds who are lovers of beauty, and fish who are lovers of justice, and bears who are lovers of like intimacy and one-on-one human connections. Like, I think part of the reason I wanted to come up with that was because to give the love of beauty like an equal placing to love of justice, and to think about the world without people who love beauty making the world it's just a very dismal, not human atmosphere.
No, I think that makes perfect sense, and I'm going to ask the audience a question here about that trifecta in a moment. I don't know that one can determine what one is, but I feel firmly bird. I feel firmly bird. Have you all read the book? Yeah, everybody, of course, obviously. So on the count of 3, just like yell out what you are: bird, fish, bear. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
I think you should do a show of hands, because that's too
okay. How many birds? How many birds?
Well, because you're at a literary event. It should be, birds would be disproportionately represented at an art event.
How many fish? Okay. Bears. Oh my goodness. It's
about a 3-way
big bear. Yeah. I mean, but there's a little more. Be careful of those bears. Be careful of the bears. But speaking of, I don't know. Let's see. I've got all these. I didn't write questions. I just wrote these.
So will somebody just
prompts.
in the audience ask why just one? I mean, it's a cosmology. Like, it's a way of understanding people through like 3 different symbols. I mean, obviously, like anything that breaks down humans, it's breaking down humans. But what to tie it into everything else I was saying, the idea is that people have a certain predominant way of viewing the world, and that filter is what they critique the world through. So it's not just like I love beauty, but like when I look at the world, what I'm critiquing is order, beauty, meaning. This is what I first see in any situation. And I say in the book that the ones who are critiquing the birds are the happiest of all, because when you look at God's creation, it is incredibly beautiful. I mean, if you look at the sky and the mountains and the sea, like, you can really not improve upon it. Some people would like a pink sky, but sometimes the sky is pink, so I don't think you can improve upon it. But the people that critique the world through the prism of like justice, social justice, how humans treat each other on a mass scale, there are a lot of problems. They're not as happy as the birds. And the people that are critiquing the world in terms of what they value the most, which is like intimate human connections, family relations, there's also a lot of disappointment and unhappiness there. And it's interesting, I was doing an interview and I kind of realized for the first time, like, all of those 3 types have problems loving each other. Because the people that are interested in beauty are not primarily interested in people, which makes them like not good romantically. They're thinking.
We're interested in beautiful people.
Yeah, and that's even the worst thing of all.
Sometimes beautiful people are They don't love you back, or they're very hard to love.
Exactly. You waste your whole entire life.
My whole life so far.
And then the bears like want to hold you too close, and that's like claustrophobic. And then the fish are interested in like you want to be the most important person to the fish, but like the fish is more interested in like in social justice and helping all the people, not just one. So I guess like the overall critique that I realized I had like for God is like the difficulties that we have loving each other, and like how we're always kind of slipping past each other, and it never quite fits, and like the bird loves the fish, and that's a mess, and and so yeah, I guess that's my main complaint.
That's a bold complaint. But speaking of loving, something that honestly I hadn't. I mean, this, so many parts of this book were like a real revelation, like reading a line. I mean, this book is bonkers delicious. I just have to say that out loud, like really, really great. And honestly, as a filmmaker, I'll get to kind of like the form of the book, the page breaks, the blank pages. It's not a blank page. That's not a fair thing to say. The pages with no words on it. I mean, I don't know. There's something there visually stunning, and also like this cover is bonkers beautiful, really fantastic.
Yeah.
But let me just say, oh, did you want to say something about the cover?
Oh no, just going to say Ellsworth Kelly painting. Yeah, I was just going to credit the cover.
Of course,
yeah,
gorgeous,
it's incredible.
And I'll come back to that green, but so something that I hadn't thought about was, so I am the youngest of 5 children. My parents were married until my father died in 2016, so we have that dead dad in common. And I grew up in a household with like lots and lots of love, which probably makes me, just need love in a different way. And it never occurred to me until thinking about poor orphan Annie, that like, is that parents' love the first love? Like, is that how we learn to love?
Yeah.
Or how do you think we learn to love?
I mean, it's probably, yeah. I mean, like a century of Freud would say it is the like primary love, that everything else kind of is in reaction to, or patterned on or whatever. I mean, I would think that. I mean, I don't know. In the book, in any case, like the primary love Mira has is like with her father and with Annie, and the father loves her too much, and Annie doesn't love her enough, and that's like, yeah, I just, and that's all it's going to be for her whole life.
What was so funny reading this too was like I remembered, and my father has, obviously has been, passed away since 2016. But it made me think of the most weird memory is that when I was little, like 5 or something, like one of my very first memories is of my father and I walking up to like the corner store to get, I don't know, milk or something, and I distinctly remember that I really truly thought that people passing us on the street, cars driving by, thought I was his wife, and I was just small. Really, I was like 5, and I thought like, I think everybody thinks this is, because we'd be holding hands, and I was like, I think everybody thinks this is my husband, and I'm just short. And then I would play this game at the same kind of age where I would like sit on my dad's lap and kind of stroke his face, and he and my mom would have these like kind of adjacent whatever lazy boy chairs or whatever, and I would stroke my dad's face, and my mom would say, "Oh, you hussy, like get away from my husband," I know I've never said that to anybody else. You guys, can we just be real Fight Club about this? So whatever, although it's being taped, so never mind. But even though there's not. Like thinking, and I'm someone who's been deeply resistant to, marriage in my adult life, actually.
So you're married to your father.
Yeah, clearly, you know?
I mean, this is what the story,
And,
where the
you
story's
know?
turning around.
And I don't know, like there was just something, the sort of like absent of the, of the mother or just their relationship. There's some like I mean, I have it marked, but, there was something about like, years and years of psychology was telling Mira not to lay down with her dad, after he had passed away or something like that, that in that moment, and so many of my films have been about people coping with loss. And so much of this book is about coping. I mean, we can say grief, but I think it's like how we cope, and coping is so personal and so particular and can be so abject. The whole everything, all of the moments in this book that are about Mira's coping, with her father's death, just struck me, not in a triggering way, just in a way that's like, yeah, that's about right. And
I could read that part that I was
oh,
gonna...
let's do it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great point.
That's exactly what the part that I thought that I would read
Perfect timing.
was sort of about.
Please.
So
Sheila will read to us. How lucky are we today?
I'm just going to read a few pages from the second section of the book where, her father has died, and this is just in the aftermath, sort of the immediate weeks and months aftermath of that. She passed weeks in bed, hours and hours, just playing the Jewel game on her phone. The game was easy and beautiful, and she felt she was very good at it. Every time she played, she would think, after this game, you will put down your phone and do something else. But she never put down her phone, and she never did something else. She continued to play the Jewel game. She thought, it's okay, don't worry, you won't play the Jewel game forever. But what if she did play the Jewel game forever? She thought about her entire life as she arranged jewels upon jewels. She thought about her life very slowly. She felt her brain get slow, clear, and focused. Organizing jewels took care of the nervous part of her brain and replaced it with the pleasurable sensation of having done a good job cleaning jewels. She felt like she was creating order in the universe as the jewels disappeared. As she was clearing away jewels, she wondered, isn't it time yet to become part of the world? What world? After all, the world was also right here where she was living. Her bed was as much the world as anything outside it. The world included her phone, her bed, these jewels. The world included her doing this. How could she ever become more a part of it? So she cleaned away the jewels, assured there was nowhere she had to go. One afternoon, she stopped her crying and answered the phone and sat up and talked to her uncle for half an hour. Her roommate's large dog lay sleeping on the couch where Mira had just been lying on him. When she hung up the phone, she lay back down on the dog, resting her cheek against his back, and was surprised to find his fur all wet from her tears. She didn't know why she spent so much of her life thinking about such trivial things or looking at websites, when just outside her window there was a sky that was not trivial. Had it been wrong of her not to understand that the sky was more valuable than a website? People once valued the sky, but only because they had nothing better, because they didn't have websites. It was hard to tell which was right. Either the sky was more valuable than a website, or a website was more valuable than the sky. If she gathered together the amount of time she spent looking at websites and the amount of time she spent looking at the sky, then her life was clearly answering which was the more valuable for her. She and her father will never sit and look at a movie screen together, and the thought of never going to a movie with him again makes her miss him so unbearably, as though that was all they did, as though that was their favorite thing they did together. Was it? Maybe it was. She didn't realize at the time, but now it's clear it was their favorite thing. Why didn't they do it more often? Probably there wasn't always a good movie playing. Probably she was busy. Busy. She had thought that when someone died, it would be like they went into a different room. She had not known that life itself transformed itself into a different room and trapped you in it without them. She wanted her father to know how bad she was feeling. She didn't want to get over the pain. She didn't have the energy to make the best of it. She didn't see what purpose it would serve to make the best of something in a world that felt stripped of any arrows, any direction, any sense. Who would she be making the best of it for? Herself? She didn't care about herself. Her father, who wasn't there? The living? It was the dead who needed our love, the dead who she wanted to be loyal to, the dead who needed us most. The living could take care of themselves, going to the grocery store and all that sunshine. It was the dead who needed to be held on to, so they would not slip away. Who would save the dead from oblivion, if not we, the living? She would have to hold on to her father forever, so he would not slip away. That winter, walking through her neighborhood, she saw the little red, green, white, blue, purple, and yellow Christmas lights, which dotted the porches and were strung across the trees in the front yards of most of her neighbors. They shimmered like the most beautiful stars, just giving off their humble light, their cords curled and mangled, their plastic obvious, but they shimmered like the souls of a million long-dead people. That humans felt like adorning a tree with lights at Christmas time made her think that an intuition of some other realm wasn't completely gone from us, that humans still felt something, that there was still something to honor. People wanted to lift themselves up and lift up their neighbors with these silly little adornments, which to her, the winter her father died, meant so much. She walked through her neighborhood, choked up with gratitude over all those tiny, shining souls that adorned the trees and the falling down porches. Humans knew. They remembered. These lights spoke to our knowledge of another world, the world behind this world, the world of the spirit. Nobody was thinking it, but they knew it nonetheless. Humans hadn't lost what was most beautiful, our very small and tentative sense of the hidden, magnificent divine. No one said it, but buried in their hearts there it was. These little lights strung across all the trees proved it. We knew so little about who we were or what we were doing here, but this little gesture spoke so gently of our not knowing, our hope, our sense of connection to something universally shared, which was our not knowing, so magnificent and dizzyingly deep. It was her most reliable comfort in those winter months when her heart was bare. It was the only thing that warmed her. I always found them cheap, a woman at a party said. Yes, of course, she replied. I did too. But she wanted to explain that she finally understood them and saw through their cheapness to their deeper beauty. But how could she say what she meant? That people had placed these bright, sparkling, colorful souls everywhere, on every tree and on every doorstep. They reassured her that people knew that all around us, in the air and in the trees, were the colorful, sparkling souls of the dead. These bright and twinkling spots of light shining out from the darkness were all of their ancestors, now her own father, and all the people who had ever been born and died. We strung these symbols of them across our homes in our knowledge of their living and dying, relieved to have them twinkling near with us here forever.
Oh, thank you for that. I know we have a small amount of time before we open up to audience questions, but I wanted to also, I'll say a couple observations, and I have another question. There's something, so that child over there, one of his most favorite films is Back to the Future. And there's
great film.
There's
Yeah,
a very
mine too.
great line in there where it's like, why don't you make like a tree and leave? So there was something about like leaf and leave, you know, that I kept thinking about in that moment. And speaking of the kind of like the, you know, literally like this color and all the promotional material that the festival sent out with our images with this kind of green behind it. Again, as a filmmaker, that's like green screen, you know, it was like, and in the green screen, it's like, it can be thought of as a transparency, or it can be thought of, I mean, you could put anything in there, you know? And so, like
Place
these are,
to project onto.
or project onto, or kind of like come out of. So those are two, like the kind of like leaf, leave, you know, and the way that Mira left for a while to be in the leaf. She didn't become the leaf.
Yeah.
You know, I saw something somewhere where someone had sort of, in my estimation, sort of like understood that and said that she became a leaf. And I was like, no, she's in it. She's sort of she's in the leaf.
Yeah.
As a filmmaker too, I was like, how would I shoot that? That's interesting. Not that I'm proposing adapting this, but I mean, sometimes I think about that. Maybe because I'm also in the middle of making a new film that has lots of VFX. I was like, God, how would I shoot the in the leaf part? That's curious. But leaf, but just that this color in particular, or that the color green in the kind of world of like film and television is like thought of as like infinity on some level,
It's amazing. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I love that.
She loves it. Thank you. Okay, so here, and I have 2 more questions, then we'll open it up. So, God, I also think like, so much about this book is just about like the burden of the body, that like bodies betray us, right? Like either bodies betray us in the sense of like who we are attracted to, who we like lust for, or bodies betray us in the sense that our bodies fail, our bodies fail. And, even, and so I don't know, like I don't, maybe it's not quite a question, but like I don't know, like bodies as betrayers. It's easier to sort of like be in like there's these great observations that Mira has when she's in the leaf, like, she doesn't have legs, or like her voice doesn't quite work right, and that's frustrating. But, in that leaf, it's not a body. It's not a body that it's not her dad's dying body. It's not her body that's like lusting for Annie or whatever. So what about, what is it about bodies?
I mean, I think this book is also, I was writing it around the time I turned 40. So, that's kind of like your body starts to do things that disappoint you or whatever. You're just like, oh. I think that, so the part that I wrote about, there's this, she goes into the leaf, and yeah, she's not a body. And like, it's kind of a transition then she's in like the next half of her life in some way, where, again, this like idea of the gods comes back. But what I was thinking about was like, yeah, the gods strip us in middle age of different things. Like they stripped her of her father, and they strip you of other things, like in some cases of your beauty or of your profession or of your, like, people, different things from different people in order, but the reason, and so you can feel sad to have loss, to have things that you had and took for granted now be things that you're losing. But I think what I was trying to think about was like, well, in what way could that be good, or why is that necessary, or why is that essential for that to be something in life that one goes through? And, the idea that the gods want to see you, like that you have to be stripped in order to be seen, felt like a relief to me. And it actually feels to me, getting older, like easier and easier to be seen. Like easier to be seen by the people I love, easier to be seen by myself. I feel like I can be more honest. I'm not always like trying to make other people feel good. Like there's a way in which, okay, I can let my real thoughts be seen. And so I was trying to think of the stripping as something that could be not a liberation, but necessary, and necessary for a certain kind of depth, and something that actually can't be run away from. But yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about it before, that like right before that starts to happen, she has no body. So it's almost like this moment of hanging in midair, where there's neither like the youthful body nor, the body in the second half, but just no body. And then things start moving again. Yeah.
I know. It's so interesting to hear you talk about being seen. I mean, I actually feel like I agree. I mean, as I've gotten older, I don't. I'll say what I want. I'll do what I want. But having said that, I also think, there's a lot in Pure Color that's also about female desire, which I think is really important. And I also think that it's both a good thing and a bad thing, that as I get older, I feel like kind of invisible in the world. You know, I mean, I feel seen and heard, but in terms of desire, you know, I also sometimes I feel invisible, and yet still I have that, and I think that feels, I don't, you know, I'm being kind of binary right now, but it feels, you know, it feels gendered. You know, I think that women become, you know, like in terms of desire, you know, invisible at some point, which is bullshit. I just want to say that out loud.
I was just with a friend of mine the other day visiting. I hadn't seen her in years, and she's in a new stage of life where she's sort of she's single again, and she's probably in her mid-30s, and she's trying to figure out her sexuality, and she's just started dating women for the first time, and she's not quite sure, like, does she want to be with a woman or a man, or does it not matter either way? And I have this friend, Stanley Siegel, who's a psychoanalyst, who wrote a great book. It's not a great title, Your Brain on Sex, but it's a really good book. And he was married to a woman. He's probably in his mid-70s now, but he was married to a woman, and then in his mid-30s he realized that he's gay, and then he left, and then he had a series of homosexual relationships, and he was much happier and felt like he was living an authentic life. And in this book, he talks about, like, it's really important, because it was so important for him, but he counsels people, it's really important to think about, like, who do you want to have sex with? Like think about who you think about when you fantasize, you know, when you orgasm, like, what's the person like? Like, go out into the world and think about who you want to touch. Like, just like, and I remember reading this book after my marriage had ended, and I was just doing that for the first time, and it was like not ever a question I'd asked myself. Like, I always just kind of was in relationships with people I liked talking to. I hadn't really thought about, like, oh, I should be in relationships with people I want to have sex with. It was just like too much. So, but like finally I got to that wonderful stage of life where I was doing it differently, and I was really grateful for Stanley and his book. But I was telling my friend this, you know, I've been in a relationship for 12 years. I was telling my friend this, and I was in New York, and you know, I live in Toronto, and in New York, there's so many more people on the street, and I was like, oh, I should do that. Like, just walk through the streets and think, like, who do you want to touch? And so I've just been doing that the last few days, and you know, at first, you know, it's just like you're not quite sure, you know, and then you sort of get like more sharp and focused, and then by the end, it was just like dogs. Like, I just want to touch the dogs, you know.
Yeah, no. And we're gonna open it up for Q&As. Yeah, desire is like wildly precise. I thought you were gonna be like, you in the audience. I thought you're like, I've been scanning you guys.
That's where I thought I was going with the experiment, and just no.
Fantastic.
To hell with it all.
So while you all prepare to ask a question to Sheila, I would also want to say that I think if there's a second iteration publishing, it has to come with like a scratch and sniff. There's so many good smells.
Oh, I hadn't realized that.
Oh my God, this book, I mean, I was like, there's a lot, it's smelly. This book is
I had a whole chapter about perfume, and I took it out, but I guess there's still smells in it.
I mean,
yeah.
Well, there's that. I mean, good luck with the rest of your writing career. I mean, you know, I'm totally teasing. No, it's very smelly. I love that aspect. Questions from the audience? Kate here has a microphone. Oh, there's one over here.
Hi. So How Should a Person Be has been one of my favorite books since it came out. I've read it a lot of times. And I kind of saw Pure Color engaging with a lot of the same things in terms of like, what does it mean to make something beautiful, and what does it mean to make something beautiful in relationship with other people who make beautiful things. And so I was just curious how you saw those two books kind of engaging with each other, if you did.
Yeah, I think when I was writing Annie, she had something of Margot in her, very much, and I kind of realized that at a certain point, like, and not just the character herself, but the relationship of sort of like idolizing another woman, and sort of there's just a kind of, and I think also, you know, when Margot and I were having that really intense time together, we're still friends, but when we were having that intense time when I was writing How Should a Person Be, like, and our friend Ryan Kamstra, who's also in How Should a Person Be, the three of us were all working on our own projects. He was making an album, and I was writing How Should a Person Be, and she was making a movie called Teenager Hamlet. And at the end, we had a launch for all three of them together in 2010. And we called it our MFA. And we obviously weren't in school, but it felt like that. It felt like we had done this like intense art education with each other, learning, expanding the way we thought. And of course, like in Pure Color, she goes literally to, the school for the American Academy of American Critics. So I think the idea of like education is sort of in both of them. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the more books I write, the more I kind of realize something that I'd been afraid of when I was younger was like the idea that writers only have certain themes, and it sort of scared me not to be able to be every writer, But I kind of feel like it's sort of nice to, or nice or inevitable are the only way. Like we have certain things we're interested in, and they just come back in different forms. They sort of shapeshift. It was weird. I was going through my archives for like the notes for How Should a Person Be, because I had to bring some to somebody, and I saw a folder called Sheila Turns into a Tree, and so like. Even like, and I that was not in How Should a Person Be, but like then that happens in Pure Color, and I'd forgotten that I'd written that I'd had that idea 15 years ago. So yeah, I just lately, this whole week, all I've been thinking about is like the idea that we have sort of eternal, we're sort of like we were in an eternal state with all our ideas, almost as if we're born with all of them, and like different moments in our life like reflect, let them out in different ways or let them mingle in different ways. Yeah.
Who else? Questions? Oh.
Hey Sheila, what originally motivated you, and has it changed over time, to be a writer?
I think, when I was younger, I had lots of things that I wanted to be. Like I thought I wanted to be a director, or I thought I really wanted to be an actress. But I felt that when I was writing, I experienced a certain kind of inner peace and then like a sense of ego loss and like a transcendent feeling, and it was just like a desire to have that, I think, that started me writing, and when I would act in plays or like whatever on shows or whatever, I always felt really self-conscious. I never left myself, and I think like one of the great human experiences is like actually being able to leave yourself for a couple of minutes. I think that's why I love sleeping so much. Like it's another way of leaving myself. Some people like going canoeing. It's different, playing sports, whatever. Like, but when you find that thing that lets you kind of shed it, it's a great gift to find that. So for me, that was writing. And then I just, over the years, like I like using my brain in that way. Like I like creating a puzzle and solving it, and I like the puzzle solving aspect of writing a novel. Writing a short story is more, for me, just more of like an impulse, and you write it. And but novels are much trickier, and I like thinking, yeah, and I like sentences, yeah, and reading books.
We have time for one more question.
Thank you. I picked up A Garden of Creatures, and it seems like so much like a companion to this book. So I'm curious about how did you create those together, and also just in general your desire to do children's books as well as novels.
Okay, yeah, so A Garden of Creatures, as she just mentioned, is this children's book that I just published this week with Esme Shapiro, who did the art beautifully. And it's a picture book, and yeah, when my father died, I started this book a year before he passed away, and then worked on it for another few years. And A Garden of Creatures was also inspired by the feelings of having lost my father and lost two of my rabbits. It's kind of weird. But the book is about like a rabbit, so I'm not trying to compare the magnitude of the loss of my rabbit to the loss of my father. But I think having lost those two rabbits, funneled one day when I just wrote the story on my phone one day when I was going to my father's house to clean it out, because as anyone who's had a parent die knows, or anyone, you have a lot to do afterwards, which is so strange, how practical you have to become, especially if you're not a practical person. But I think that there is like a reason for it. that is to make you not just fall into your own, emotions completely. So you have to file papers and do all these things and clean out the house and all that. So on the way to his house, I wrote this story on my phone, and then I sent it to my friend Esme, who's an illustrator and who writes children's books, and I said, do you think this could be something? A children's book, and she loved it. She had just lost her grandfather, and she said yes, and she made the illustrations. You were talking about having to be in Canada for 2 weeks in quarantine for your film. She went to Canada, had to be in quarantine for 2 weeks, and did all the paintings when she was in quarantine. So they're both, again, like expressions of the same thing, but just through in different ways. And I wrote one other children's book, which is a commission, but I think for me, it's more like if it happens, it's kind of an accident. Yeah, it's probably, yeah. But now my niece wants one dedicated to her, so I have to, I don't know, get the first one back in print and dedicate it to her, or write another one day. I don't know.
So in the last 10 minutes of this, we have this amazing treat. Lia Kohl will come and play some music for us that's been inspired by this conversation. And in this last 30 seconds, my question for you, which it's just maybe it's going to be like don't think about it too much. But what is something that you are very good at that you might have a hard time admitting out loud?
I'm just trying to think about anything that I'm good at in my day-to-day life.
Okay, well then something that you're good at, that you're like, I'll tell you what I'm good at. Like, what do you, besides writing? Like,
yeah, and I'm just, I'm really searching for this. I'm good at buying presents for people.
Great,
Yeah.
great. That's tough. Good gift giver. Okay, and speaking of gifts, Lia Kohl, everybody.
Thank you.
Wow, like talk about beauty. I mean, this conversation with Sheila, performance by Lia. I'm sorry to say this, but your day is going to go downhill from here. Again, thank you, Chicago Humanities Festival. This is really special, and keep abortion safe and legal. Have a great night, everybody.